This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, September the 1st, we start a brand new month in a brand new style. And I can't believe I haven't done this at all. Like my first 3 years of doing Sports Catastrophe, I never did this game. But fortunately, I made notes last year and saying if I did this for a fourth year, which I did, which I am, this has to be it. And yes, this is a screen grab of a famous college football game between Appalachian State and Michigan. And it is September 1st, 2007, when App State and Michigan would face each other. It was huge. The game at Ann Arbor's Michigan Stadium, home to over 100,000 fans. First game for both teams. Michigan came into this game number 5 in the AP poll. Appalachian State was unranked. Not just because they were, terrible team. They weren't even an FBS/IA school. No, Appalachian State came from the football championship subdivision, the FCS, or the Division Two, if you will, slash IAA. So anyway, Appalachian State would head to Michigan as the two-time defending FCS champion, meaning that they were the best in the minors. Of course, a lot of people figured that the FBS school, Michigan, would do well against the FCS school, Appalachian State, because everything was like lopsided. Las Vegas sports books were so confident they didn't even give a betting line for Michigan and all that. It was the lead story of Sports Center when this happened and the cover story for Sports Illustrated. When App State did what they did, they became the first FCS team to beat an FBS team and drop Michigan from the top 25 of the AP poll entirely. Usually, when you're like number 5 and you lose your first game, you might drop like 5, 10 places, but still be in the top 25. But no, it didn't happen. So, anyway, this was huge and all that. So, the NCAA splits into 3 divisions: Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3. Division 1 has the largest programs for the athletically related financial aid for student aid. Division 1 football is split into 2 subdivisions, the FBS and FCS. FBS is the major tier, and FCS is a tier. Smaller programs compete, but they're still technically a decent team and all that. FBS teams can have 85 scholarship players. FCS would have 63. FBS teams go to bowl games. FCS teams go for a postseason tournament and all that. In 1978, it was a giant split and all that. Well, the 2 divisions could schedule games against each other. And one win against an FCS team goes to their bowl eligible status and all that. FCS teams can be paid up to $500,000 American for participating against FBS teams and all that. Appalachian State, despite being in IAA, as I call it, routinely scheduled games against the main guys. They played Auburn in '99. They played Kansas and LSU in 2005 and NC State in 2006. They would also play Wake Forest every season between 1979 and 1996, winning 6 games against Wake Forest. The Mountaineers had not been an FBS team since 2000. Michigan never faced an FCS team, which was shocking because you know how good Michigan is as a school. They always played the tough guys and all that. Appalachian State was given $400,000 to play Michigan to start the 2007 season. Of course, Las Vegas sportsbooks did not offer a betting line because of how powerful it was and all that. So, anyway, there was a lot of reaction and all that. So, Appalachian State coming into the game were ranked number 1 in the FCS. They won the last 2 championships and were the favorites to go get a three-peat and won their last 14 games. Only winning 6 games against FBS teams and all that, but that was only Wake Forest. However, Armonte Edwards was a pretty good quarterback, and he was doing well. Corey Lynch was a good safety, too, and Julian Rauch was the kicker for Appalachian State. For Michigan, they were number 5 in the AP poll and thought that they were going to win the Big Ten championship and be contenders for a national title. Michigan had a strong draft class of Jake Long, Mike Hart, and Chad Henne, who could have been in the NFL draft in 2007 but chose to stay back for another year. And those three wanted to finish their careers on a high note and all that. So Michigan had some great players, including Alan Branch and Lamar Woodley on defense. Well, they lost those two and all that. So anyway, App State would play Michigan, and a lot of people would be like, "What network would be the network to carry this?" Well, you usually don't see an FCS FBS matchup on the main networks like ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, or even ESPN. So this game would be on the Big Ten network. It was brand new to Americans and had 17 million subscribers. Practically, the Big Ten network is this TV network that would show Big Ten events live and archived when the Big Ten was actually 12 teams and not the super conference it is now in 2024. Unfortunately, there would be not too many Wolverine fans to watch it, even though Michigan was hosting, due to the fact that Comcast and Charter, two of the major cable providers in Michigan, did not carry the Big Ten network, which was terrible. All that, but still, America would tune in. The Big Ten network would not be available in Canada yet. I think it took a year or two. But regardless, this was huge. As Tom Brenneman, who unfortunately later on would lose his sportscasting career in the worst way possible by muttering in a hot mic about Kansas City and something to do with the LGBTQ community. Charles Davis, former college football star, would be the color analyst, and Calissa Thompson would report from the sidelines. This was the first time Thompson would be a sideline analyst for any network. Well, Brenneman and Davis were more experienced and were actually the guys who called the 2007 BCS championship game and also the 2007 Fiesta Bowl. You know, Boise State's 3 plays to sink Oklahoma. Anyway, it was a beautiful day, temperatures in the mid 70s, and a wind of 10 to 15 miles per hour. 109,000 fans would come in attendance. The game would start at 12:07 and end at 3:40. So anyway, Michigan got the ball first and all that. And Mike Hart hit a touchdown to make it 7-0. And then a key 68-yard touchdown pass from Armonte Edwards through Dexter Jackson tied the game at 7. Michigan got a play in which Henne threw the touchdown to Greg Matthews, and Michigan was up 14-7. So that looked pretty good. However, the second quarter was a different quarter, as App State got a touchdown from Edwards to Hans Bachian, tying the game, and then Edwards threw a touchdown to Jackson for the second time, make it 21-14. And then Armonte Edwards ran for a touchdown to make it 28-14. Michigan kicked the field goal to make it 28-17, and that was just shocking. Second quarter, it scores 28-17. And you can be forgiven for the fact people will say, oh, well, Michigan's up by 11. That's not true. Appalachian State's up by 11. I was like, what? So regardless of that, App State kicked the field goal to make it 31-20. And then Michigan got a touchdown by Mike Hart. They went for 2 to try to cut the deficit down to 3 points, but failed. So App State was up 31-26, headed to the fourth quarter. Unfortunately, they had to punt. Michigan had to play, however, was picked off by Leonard Love, App State defender. App State would be forced to punt. Michigan tried to play. On fourth down, they failed to pass. App State had the ball and were forced to punt. Mike Hart would have a 54-yard touchdown, breaking App State hearts in a sense. Michigan was up 32-31 with 4:36 left. They went for 2 to take a 3-point lead, but failed. So anyway, Edwards was picked off on the first play after that, and Michigan had the ball at App State's 43-yard line. They went for a 43-yard field goal, but it was blocked. App State had the ball with 1:37 left. They drove down the field, and with 26 seconds left, rather than risking things, they decided to go for the field goal right off the bat, although they could have driven the clock down further. Rouch kicked the field goal to make it 34-32 with 26 seconds left, thinking that Michigan would not have enough time, but they did, heading through a gigantic pass to Mario Manningham that went for a long gain, and then add 15 yards. Well, it would have been there would have been a 15-yard penalty, but because of the first down and the 46-yard play, it was declined. So Michigan had a 37-yard field goal with Tampa 6 seconds left on the clock, which you see, of course, in the screen grab. And we all know what happened next. Michigan had a chance to kick the winning field goal, but Corey Lynch blocked the field goal attempt from Jason Gendrell, and App State won 34-32. If I can remember the Brenneman call. Let's see. Snap kick from foot of Jason Gendrell. Kick. It's blocked. Appalachian State has shocked the football world. One of the greatest upsets in sports history. It was like amazing. App State freaking won the game 34-32 of all teams and of all things. Michigan, the number 5 team in college football, had just lost to an IAA school. It was like unbelievable. When you look at the stats, Michigan had more total yards than App State, barely beating them in passing yards, but rushing yards 246. App State had 160. Penalties were the same. Third down conversion, same amount of number. Turnovers 5 combined, but that wasn't bad. It was just unbelievable what happened. So anyway, App State was unanimously picked number 1 in the FCS poll. After all, they beat Michigan. Several voters in the AP poll actually wanted to vote for App State, just to vote for them, not to put them in the top 25. They couldn't because it was all the poll was limited to FBS teams. However, the AP would amend their policy the following week to allow FCS teams to receive votes in the AP poll. The Mountaineers would score 19 points in week 3. App State's winning streak would continue to week 5 when they lost to Wolford. They lost to Georgia Southern and they were 5-2, and it looked like they were not going to go 3-time champs. However, App State would win the next 4 to finish 9-2. Wolford would win the conference title because of their win over App State. App State had to face James Madison and narrowly beat them 28-27, and then beat Eastern Michigan 38-35 in a close one. And then in the semis, they crushed Richmond 55-35 before facing Delaware and beating the Blue Hens to win their 3rd straight FCS national championship. They were the first team to do so, winning 3 FCS titles in a row, and the first football team, Division I football team since Army, winning the title 3 times from 44 to 46 to do so. They actually got 5 votes at the end of the year in the AP poll, putting them 34th overall. As for Michigan, this was just humongous. Michigan's first game against an FCS team, and they lost. So effectively, they were done for. They weren't going to win the national championship. They actually dropped out of the top 25 completely. The worst part for Michigan was that they lost to Oregon 39-7 in a game that my buddy Bill Lang actually attended in person, and which I'm jealous about. But yet Michigan fumbled it. However, despite all that, they did win the next 8 games after the Oregon loss, putting them 8-2 and putting them as high as number 13 in the AP poll. Unfortunately, they would lose twice in a row to end the season. They lost to Ohio State, and Lloyd Carr decided to retire. The Wolverines got an invitation to the New Year's Day Cap One Bowl, which practically is the runner-up of the Big Ten versus the runner-up in the SEC. They did beat Florida 41-35. They did beat a young Tim Tebow in that game. Michigan would finish 18th in the AP poll. It was just unbelievable and all that. This was just amazing and all that. It would be very chaotic. So anyway, since the victory in 2007, 5 other FCS teams have beat ranked FBS teams. James Madison in 2010 beat number 13 Virginia Tech. 2013, Eastern Washington beat number 25 Oregon State. North Dakota North Dakota State beat Kansas State. 2016, North Dakota State won again, beating number 13 Iowa 23-21 in a shocker. And September 2021, Montana beat number 20 Washington 13-7. The reaction was huge and all of that. It's just amazing and all of that. There would be games like Ohio State and Penn State were both playing at the same time at 12 o'clock. I guess different teams, but like fans left when Ohio State beat Youngstown. But Ohio State would air the final minutes of the App State Michigan game on the big screen. And there was a large roar from the remaining attendees after realizing Michigan lost. Meanwhile, Penn State, after beating Florida International, the loudspeaker said that 20 seconds to play fourth quarter, Appalachian State 34, Michigan 32, and then players were crowded outside of Beaver Stadium to watch the closing seconds on in-stadium TVs and all that. App State and Michigan would play a rematch in 2014, but this time Michigan learned their lesson and crushed App State 52-14. That was actually App State's first ever game as an FBS or an IA school. But what is more shocking is the 2007 season. It was just unreal. The 2007 season, this would be the opening salvo, the opening shot in the craziness of the 2007 college football season. Yes, LSU won the title over Ohio State, but only for the second time in the BCS era. No FBS team finished undefeated. And Kansas was the only team from a BCS qualifying conference to finish with just one loss. It was like unbelievable what happened is all that. It was the year of the upset in 2007 because many ranked teams would fall to lower ranked or unranked opponents and all that. That was done 59 times. Teams in the top 5 of the AP were defeated by unranked opponents 13 times, setting a new record. 13, unbelievable. 1967 was the only other season to see many upsets, but the AP would only rank 10 teams instead of 20, so that was a bit of chaos and all of that. However, the 2007 season also was known as the curse of being number 2. Not number 1, but number 2. Well, number 1 did fall. LSU, despite their BCS title, were number 1 and fell twice in triple overtime. They lost to Kentucky and Arkansas in triple overtime, but still won the national title game. Number 1, Missouri had a chance to go to the BCS title game, but lost to Oklahoma in the Big 12 game. So that's just like holy shit and all that. But what even more amazing was the curse of being number 2. USC was number 2 against Stanford October 6th at the Memorial Coliseum, and USC was favored by 41 points and had a 35-game winning streak on home turf and 24 straight in Pac-10 play. Stanford won, and a young Richard Sherman, as a receiver, caught a major pass, and then a few plays later, Stanford scored the touchdown against SC, even though that the Versus Network people thought that USC scored the touchdown, but then corrected themselves to Stanford. Number 2, Cal, the next week, would host Oregon State and lose 31-28. That game would be memorable for both. I can't remember the Cal quarterback. I would say Bowler, but that's not right. That Mike Riley, I think it was, who was the star quarterback for Cal, and then he got hurt during the game. And then they made terrible clock management, and Cal could not get the tying field goal up. South Florida surprised a lot of people by making it to be number 2. In fact, they had their first football scrimmage near trailers and trees years ago. They were number 2. They went to Rutgers and lost 30-27 to Mr. Magoo's alma mater. Boston College, with a young Matt Ryan, was ranked number 2. Was on home turf against Florida State and lost to them 27-17. Oregon became number 2. And then November 15th in Arizona, they lose 34-24 to the Wildcats. Kansas was number 2, hosting Missouri, who was number 4, in a game at Arrowhead Stadium. Missouri and Kansas in the border war. And Kansas, for how shitty they were in the 90s and 2000s, were ranked number 2. But Missouri, with a young Chase Daniel, did their job. And West Virginia had a chance to be the no to go to the BCS title again. All they had to do was beat Pitt on home turf in a rivalry game. But Pittsburgh won the game 13-9, knocking West Virginia out of contention. So that was the year of the upset. And I'm not upset by me talking about it. Pun intended. Anyway, I'm Jeff. I'm going to do